What's up everyone, the Slime Sonic Fan here, and Helluva Boss is a phenomenal show. I know, hot take, right? When I watched the Has-Been Hotel and Helluva Boss pilot back in 2020, I was super fascinated with Has-Been Hotel in its world, and thought of Helluva Boss as the lesser of the two shows since while its pilot was super humorous, it didn't hook me the way Has-Been Hotel did. And man was I proven wrong. With 7 episodes of Season 1 having been released, the series has received high praise from both me and practically the entirety of the internet. At least up until now. With the recent premiere of Season 2, most of the existing fandom have sung its praises like usual. However, I have seen a fair bit of criticism thrown its way, with a number of videos dedicated to discussing why this episode was such a letdown, and more specifically, why the context it establishes ruins the relationship between series' main characters, Blitz and Stolis. I was personally a huge fan of this episode and thought the story it tells further enriches the dynamic between these two characters, and provides us with a solid explanation on why they're the way they are in the present. So today, I'm going to discuss Helluva Boss Season 2 Episode 1, and explain why I think it's such a well-written episode, contrary to what some people believe. Before I do so, this video will obviously have tons of spoilers for Helluva Boss, and if you haven't watched it, I highly implore you to do so. It is an animated dark comedy created by VisiPop, jam-packed with well-written characters, uncensored comedy, and imaginative depiction of hell, and quite possibly has some of the best animation I've ever seen, which is made more impressive considering this is all coming from an indie studio. It's a free-to-watch web series available right here on YouTube, so go watch it if you haven't. That said, let's begin. The first half of the episode takes place over 2 decades in the past, where Blitz and Stolis are just children, and can I say off the bat that both of them are super adorable, especially baby Stolis.
Calm yourself, young prince. You know excitement is unbecoming of a geisha.
Just the first few minutes of the episode alone do a great job of establishing Stolis' strict upbringing. As you just saw, he's not even allowed to get excited about his own birthday, and when we meet his father, Pamian, shortly after, it doesn't take much detective work to find out that this guy is a total douche.
There is my little, which son is this one? There's so fucking many.
Stolis, your highness.
Stolis! Yes! right. That's the one.
Since Stolis not only has strict expectations placed on him from a young age, a super neglectful father, and said father revealing later on that he has no friends, all this does a great job in explaining Stolis' antisocial behavior in the present. Like we see with his daughter, Octavia, and practically all the time with Blitz, Stolis is not very perceptive when it comes to social interactions and with how he presents himself. While this was initially dismissed as him being simply comedically naive, Stolis not having any friends through most of his life, along with forcefully being engaged and tasked with huge responsibilities at an early age, all perfectly explain his rather bizarre behavior in the present. Speaking of which, let's talk about Stolis' forced engagement. Yep, he and Stella's marriage was a forced one, which is later explained to be for the purpose of birthing a precautionary heir to the throne. Not only does Stolis and Stella forcefully being engaged due to role circumstances partly explain the couple's immense dislike for each other, but it also turns out Stella has been a horrible person since day one. This right here is the biggest criticism I hear for this episode, and it's easily the most justifiable. Before this episode, we all believe that there was a point in time where Stolis and Stella did love each other, but over time, their marriage started to fail. Then Stolis met Blitz, had an affair with him, and thus began Stella's immense and unrelenting hatred for her husband. This all but confirmed theory gave Stolis a lot of depth. While he's not a good person and his betrayal practically destroyed his entire family, you could still sympathize with him since his love for Blitz is completely genuine and somewhat justified, and you could tell he felt some guilt after doing what he did and clearly still loved Octavia. It also made Stella not so one-dimensional since her hate for Stolis was also justified. However, this episode reveals that Stella has always been absolutely horrible to Stolis, and the two were never actually in love. I'll admit that this creative decision does take away some nuance from Stolis' character, but it's certainly not a retcon, and it does make sense when you think about it. For one, this show has conveyed at every opportunity that Stolis is a good person. He's not perfect, but we see him go up and beyond for Octavia and Blitz, the only 2 people in the world he cares about, meaning he really loves the people closest to him. I personally think that even if Stolis and Stella's marriage started failing, he's not the type of person who would so willingly and enthusiastically put his wife and daughter through so much pain with an affair. This episode confirming that he and Stella's marriage was always super toxic makes him cheating with Blitz much more realistic considering the type of person he is. And second, something cool I wasn't expecting this episode to do was just explain why this owl is so thirsty all the time.
When I'm lonely, I become hungry. And when I become hungry, I want to choke on that red of yours, your and lick all of your before taking out your and with more teeth until you're screaming like a fucking baby.
I initially thought this was going to be some random comedic gag present throughout the series, but no, in reality, it makes perfect sense. Stolis is sexually frustrated. Think about it, his entire love life has been spent with Stella, someone who hates his guts for no reason, and even admits to one of her friends she had to pretend to want to fuck him and think he's terrible in bed, meaning he definitely wasn't getting no pussy after Octavia was born. Top that off of it being subtly implied that Stolis isn't bi and might only be sexually attracted to guys. This means he is a 30-something adult who's deprived of sexual pleasure, further explaining and justifying his lust for Blitz. I know there's this line Octavia says in episode 2.
I'm sorry, sweetie. I thought you loved it here.
When I was a kid and my parents didn't hate each other.
But this isn't evidence enough that Stolis and Stella at one point had a good marriage. Keep in mind that the innocent perspective of a child sometimes perceives reality in a different way. Stolis has always been super tolerant of Stella's horrible treatment of him, and keep in mind she might not have been outright super cruel to him in front of Octavia. So it's totally possible Octavia was completely naive to the rift between her parents until Stolis' affair, prompting Stella to go full mask off. It would make sense for her to blame her dad for their ruined family, since she's completely unaware they've hated each other since she was born. This is even backed up later in the episode when Stolis says this.
The only reason I have endured your constant insults and cruelty was for that girl to have a normal life.
So yeah, what people say is the biggest problem with this episode is something I think deeply ties everything together. Anyways, after Kid Stolis breaks down in tears, Pamian takes his son to the circus to cheer him up. And by take him, I mean have his butler take him while he watches through a mirror. That of the year if you couldn't tell. And it's here where we finally see Kid Blitzo, and immediately after, Stolis falls for him on first sight. I know, love on first sight is a little cliche, but it, like the other context given, makes sense. Stolis is in love with Blitz. And that kind of love doesn't exist for a high school crush or a cute waitress. No, that kind of love is exclusive to the love of your life. Stolis' lack of sexual pleasure explains why he obsesses over sex with Blitz, but him being Stolis' first and only love explains why he's obsessed with Blitz. Their relationship is exclusively sexual on the outside, but is actually rooted in genuine love. Also, can I just say how cool it is to finally see more of Blitzo's childhood? Like we've already been told, he sucks as a clown, had a piece of shit dad, and at one time, had a good relationship with his sister. But actually getting a chance to see it is great, and there are some tiny things like Blitz thinking blood is cool and having a fondness for fictional violence that nicely foreshadows his future business. Anyways, Pamian notices Stolis' fondness of Blitz and casually buys him for a day as a neat little birthday gift. This is a cool way of further showing just how low-ranking citizens imps are. Blitzo's dad tells his son the news, but also pressures him to steal as much from Stolis' house as he can while he's there. I like to take this time to mention the correlation between Blitz and Stolis' dynamic of their fathers, and how their upbringing shaped them as people. For one, both of these dads are super neglectful of their children, which explains why both Blitz and Stolis try their best to be good fathers. Whether intentional or not, they're trying to give their daughters the love they didn't have as children. And like I said, there's some neat aspects of their fathers that carried over to them. With Pamian and Stolis, it's something as minor as both of them loving the circus. But in Blitz's case, it's much more interesting since we see his father is super emotionally manipulative and exploitive of his son. A trait Blitz has definitely inherited, exploiting Stolis' affections all the time for his grimoire, and being accused of his ex Verasica of doing the exact same thing. God, the writing of the show is so fucking good. Anyway, Stolis and Blitzo meet up for their arranged playdate. Initially, things start out pretty awkward. Stolis' antisocial behavior comes out when he shows off his book collection, unaware he's boring Blitzo to tears. Then Blitzo decides to rope in Stolis for a make-believe game that involves bagging off his expensive treasures. In an interesting montage, we watch as Blitzo starts out eager to rob this kid and Stolis reluctantly going along with the game, to the two having fun. Even after Blitzo hands his dad the bag of treasures, he still sticks around, not because he has to, but because he's genuinely enjoying Stolis' company. That's something a lot of people don't realize about these two's relationship. Blitz does care about Stolis, at least on some level. A romance between them could very much work. But since Blitz is so closed off from letting anyone get too close to him and can't help but see Stolis as a potential rich prick just bribing him for sexual favors, he does his best not to show it. But this childhood sequence does confirm that the two have always had feelings for each other. Fast forward to 25 years later, and we see Stolis as an adult, completely miserable and alone, only being motivated by Octavia to keep going forward. Then, Blitz appears before him, detained by security, and is immediately recognized by Stolis. What follows is a scene I think is largely unappreciated because of just how well written it is. You see, Blitz is here only for Stolis' grimoire, which is essential for his business. Stolis brings Blitz to his room and makes it a playful romantic remark which is meant to be light teasing before proceeding with what is supposed to be a friendly reunion. But either because he misreads the remark or is desperate to get the grimoire, or both, Blitz goes along with it and practically forces himself on Stolis, who is becoming increasingly uncomfortable. Not because he isn't strongly attracted to him, but because this is Stolis we're talking about. Even with how terrible of a person Stella is, he's still hesitant on cheating. But right as he notices his missing grimoire, Blitz desperately bites him to distract him, inadvertently awakening years of repressed sexual longing, resulting in the funniest scene in the episode.
Oh, so you're a kinky little imp, are you? Do you like it when I talk to you dirty? I want you to me with your in. Get it all the way through me, you.
Oh, stop it.
Yes, if that's what Blitzy wants.
Before Blitz can make off with the grimoire, he hears this.
You have no idea how long I've craved this kind of passion, and how much it means that the one who wants me is my first ever friend.
And this alone encourages him to go back and finish the job, either confirming Blitz isn't as heartless as his cold exterior suggests, or like we've already deduced, he loves Stolis as well, despite not wanting to show it. That segment ends with Stella finding out about Stolis' affair, and we jump to the present, where Stolis is at his lowest point after the Aussies episode, and is facing the harsh reality, at least in his mind, that the toxic love shared between he and Blitz was never real. That despite his best efforts, he is truly alone. He then starts singing what is easily one of my favorite songs in the series so far about his false love of Blitz before he's approached by Stella, who, like always, is being Stella. Then, likely because he has nearly nothing left to lose, he finally breaks it off of Stella, regardless of the consequences he'll face. But the episode doesn't end with triumph. It ends with Stolis staring off in the sky, with the episode concluding on how a once joyous, love-struck boy grew into someone who's completely alone and miserable. Guys, this episode is so good. Part of the reason why I believe it's gotten such negative backlash is because it's way less on the nose like the series has been up to this point, and it's easily one of the more mature ones. The lore contributions this episode adds may not coincide with what we initially thought, but that's perfectly okay. Guys, a theory is not going to be right all the time, and a show going in a different direction than you initially thought isn't a retcon. This episode is dealing with a lot, and it has succeeded in giving much needed context between Blitz and Stolis' relationship, and it was a joy to watch from start to finish. It easily sits behind Episode 7 Part 1 as my favorite in the series. But what did you guys think of Season 2 Episode 1 of Helluva Boss? Did you like it? Or were you disappointed like others were? Be sure to let me know. Anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, then please like, subscribe, and as always, I will see you guys next time. Peace out.